Hi, I'm Dr. Frank Thomas, and this is another presentation of the African American Preaching Legacy Series, where we find some of the best preachers in the African American tradition, and we bring them and discuss with them. And today, it is my very special privilege to have Bishop Thomas Garrett Benjamin Jr. here with us. Yay! He is the pastor Emeritus of Light of the World Christian Church. And so it is our honor to have you, and thank you so much for consenting for us to sit and talk for a while. It is great to have you here.
It is good to be here. Believe me when I tell you.
In Indy.
Yeah, in Indy.
3
years of continuous service to one church. Retired 12 years ago. Now 81 years old.
Wow, okay.
And nobody believes it, except me. Yeah.
So you've done a tremendous work here in Indy and really around the nation. So I want you to start with your story, wherever you would like to start with the story, and kind of bring us up to 81.
Okay. Well, you know, my story, I wrote a book called Mama's Boy. And that was a tribute to my grandmother. When I was 5 years old, my parents divorced. And obviously they were not interested in raising me. More so they were interested in, I think, living their own single life. And so they sent me to Cleveland, Ohio. My mother's mother, Marilla Roberts Jackson. They put me on a train. I was only 5 years old, by myself. And I almost am able to remember it, almost every clip of it. But anyway, it was an overnight ride from St. Louis, Missouri to Cleveland, Ohio. And my grandmother, 5'2", no pretense at all, just a little lady who loved her grandson, was there at the station, train backed into the Cleveland terminal. Back then, trains, you know, big stations, backed in, steam coming up. The porter, he was supposed to be looking out after me, so he looked for her. And so I saw her, and she just a very humble woman. And he put me out on the steps, and I jumped into her arms. And she said, "How's Mama's Boy?" And so the book I named Mama's Boy. And it was really a tribute, as I said, to her. I came from a broken family, and it will help you to probably understand why all of my I've written 4 books, but all of them basically are about children in one way or another, because that's kind of, you know, that's the thing that feeds me. I want to make sure that people understand that you can come from a broken home, but you don't have to live a broken life. Yeah. And so that's kind of been my story. I was raised in Cleveland, in the Glenville area. I lived on East 105th Street. They would call it the ghetto now, but it was a very thriving, mixed community back then. But I grew up there, went to grade school there, and then I graduated from grade school, went to what they called junior high then. And it's interesting that my wife lived 1 block away, and I never met her until after I graduated from college. So after I got through, I got to the 7th grade, my grandmother said, "Cleveland is getting pretty rough, and I don't want you to get trapped." Marilla Roberts Jackson was a very special person. So she said that she's watching What's My Line, was an old, game show. And John Daly was the host. And she liked John Daly's elocution, the way he talked. I think he was I don't know if he was from England or not, but the point is, she said, he came on one day and he said, I just got back from my little school in Tilton, New Hampshire. I'm the chairman of the board of trustees there, and my grandmother rang a bell. She wrote him a letter, and he wrote her back. She wrote him a letter. Said, I have a little grandson. He's in the 7th grade, and he's finishing. But I want to send him to where you went to school. Now you have to understand, industrial Cleveland, this little black woman by herself. She was an entrepreneur businesswoman. She owned property. She started with just just renting to men who worked for the Cleveland Transit System, and then she bought another home. Then she bought another home. Then she bought another home. Then she had all this property. Then she bought a hotel called the Hotel Thomas, named it after me, right behind the Tijuana nightclub. I never will forget. Oh, it was wild, and I lived in that hotel for a while. But anyway, she sent me to New Hampshire. Now you have to understand, you just imagine New Hampshire, 1960. Yeah, there was, the only thing black was the streets, And so I had this unusual prep school education. I sort of resented it for a while. But then I figured out I'm getting a blessing, And I'll never will forget when she said to me, Frank, she said, when they dropped me off, I said, Mama, I don't know how I can repay you for this. She said, love is not to be paid back. It's to be passed on. And so I was up there for 4 or 5 years. And in many ways, it gave me the winner's edge. All boys, competitive, in that Andover, Newton, Exeter, all those prep schools up there. When I got out of there, I came, I wanted to reunite, if I could, get to know my dad. Okay, he was a dentist in St. Louis and became the longest practicing dentist in the city of St. Louis. So that longevity thing kind of runs in our family for that, serving, He, so I went to St. Louis, and I went to St. Louis University. And he paid for it, and I was really happy about that. And so I did get to know him much better. He had actually prepared an office for me. He was trying his best to pull me into that dentistry thing. And I just couldn't, it was not me, And so I graduated from St. Louis University, moved back to Cleveland with my grandmother, worked for the Division of Child Welfare in Cleveland, Ohio, as a social worker. Met Bill Hanna, you remember Bill Hanna, who was pastoring a small Christian church, Disciples of Christ. Now, interesting enough, my grandmother was a praying woman. She was a deeply, her mother was a faith healer, but she never pushed religion on me. So I went with her every now and then. I didn't, I used to watch her pray, but I ran the streets for, when I got back to Cleveland, I wanted to make up for being way up there in Alaska almost, and so I actually, so when I went back to Cleveland, I actually, Bill Hanna also had a dual vocation. He was working at the Division of Child Welfare also, but he had this little church, and he kept giving me a card saying, you look every Monday, you look like you've been through something. You ought to come to church. I said, well, no, Bill, I don't. So finally, one day, I said, I looked at this card. I said, I think I'm going to do this. And he had on the card, got to give him credit, his vision. I didn't know it was his vision, but it was a house church. His vision was a temple. It was the most beautiful church. I pulled up. I said, "Well, wait a minute. Where is this church?" So anyway, I went. But man, listen, there were about 40 people in there, an upright piano, and the thing was real. I mean, they were going after it. You know what I mean? And I tell you the truth, Frank, it was overwhelming to me. And within 3 weeks, I was down the aisle, had never joined a church before in my life. I was 22 years old, got baptized. I got baptized the next Sunday in another church because they didn't have a baptism. They only had a bathtub. So I had to go to another church that got baptized and got called to the ministry through Jeremiah 1. Jeremiah, son of Hilkiah, in the land of Benjamin. I said, "Oh Lord, I'd never seen that before." I accepted my calling, and immediately I started. So Bill said, "Well, look, man, I don't even have a theological education, but you need to get one." And he eventually did get one. But so he said, "Well," I said, "Well, where would I go to monastery?" No, he said seminary. Oh, I said, "Oh, that's good because monastery doesn't sound right." So I went. I looked at Colgate. Well, it was actually Crozier then. Colgate, Rochester. Drove over by myself. This is really what. Drove over by myself. I never will forget it. Just driving by myself, half sleepy. Been out half the night before, but not because of anything wrong. I didn't anticipate how far it was. So I'm driving and I get there. Now you'll love this because you're a preacher's preacher and a preacher's teacher. So I'm walking around Crozier. It was in Chester, Pennsylvania, where Dr. King went to school. And Dr. King, by the way, was a great influence even in college. I said, now here's a brother that is totally prepared. I mean, this, his everything he did. I said, oh man, I wherever he went to school is where I want to go. So anyway, so I'll get on the campus, and you'll love this. So I'm walking around trying to go into the dormitory, and I hear, it's in somebody's room, C.L. Franklin. Like they were all gathered around this recording trying to get that hoop. I said, well, this is going to be fun, but I decided that I should try, and he encouraged me to try. Said, look, we have Dr. Hanna said, we have our, we have a seminary. It's in Indianapolis, and it's our leading seminary. You should, before you go, at least go over there and look at it. And I went over it. And it was not this building. We were in Butler University at that time. And, but they were building this. And the field of education guy walked me around, brought me over here as we were, and said, this is where, where it's going to be, da, da, da. And so and that's the gentleman that took me through, it just shows you how effective an ambassador can be. I found him to be so open, so friendly, so helpful to me at the stage I was in. Right. And so I chose Christian Theological Seminary. Went here for 3 years, interned as a student minister at Witherspoon Presbyterian Church here in Indianapolis for 1 year. And then Reverend R.H. Peoples, my predecessor, who was pastoring the Second Christian Church, invited me to come to Second Christian to be their student associate, because I was a disciple, and they weren't ready when I first came, and then so it was Reverend Peoples who said also, I had actually graduated from seminary, spent 2 years at Second Christian in Indianapolis, took a call from Third Christian Church in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, as a co-pastor with a white brother, stayed there 9 months to give birth to whoever I was going to be. They called me back as Reverend Peoples was retiring. And he was, as my predecessor, he was not just my predecessor, he recruited me for, they wanted me to come back. I wasn't sure about that, but I prayed through it, and Beverly and I, we had just had our first child, and we came back to Indianapolis. Now the story is, as you well know, 43 years later, was when I retired. I retired in 2012. It was the greatest trip in ministry that any person could have. So that's kind of the story, kind of up to date. And I moved to California because my first two grandchildren lived in Palm Desert, California. And I wanted to get to know them, wanted to have some kind of influence. And so some people said, well, why do you retire so early? I mean, yeah, but that was for me to know. I just knew that it was time for, because my next ministry was with my grandchildren, yeah.
I think in 43 years of ministry, there are a tremendous amount of contributions you could make to this wisdom pool that we're building. And so I think that since it's been 12 years since retirement, 43 years of service, it might be good, because we don't get a window into retirement very often, to spend some time here, if that would be okay with you.
Well, if you mean subsequently, or?
I mean, like talking about it.
You mean today, or?
Yeah,
yes.
today.
Oh, yes, I will. Yes, I'll be glad to.
Because I normally do preaching.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I'll be happy to.
But I think your greatest contribution to us, and greatest contribution to young ministers and pastors, is to let's spend some time here. Yeah,
we started that conversation a little earlier. Yeah, and there are other things that they should.
So let's talk about it. So looking back, it's been 12 years since retirement.
Yes.
43 years of ministry. So what are some of the things that, looking back, because one snapshot is 43 years. Another snapshot is 12 years on the 43. Okay, so what have you learned in the 12, reflecting back on the 43, that you could share with us, all of us that are at some day, if we're not retiring soon, will be retiring? So give us some of the...
Well, I think that, everybody's a little different, but see, my perspective was, a lot of people want to, as you hear the old saying, die with their boots on, meaning they want to keep doing what they're doing, and they're going to do it till I die. Well, I've done a few things, but I have not, let me put it this way. Some people want to die with their boots on. I wanted to die with my flip-flops on. I wanted to take some portion of my life and not get up at 6 in the morning and be out till 10:30 at night. I love people. I wanted to, I was a shepherd, but I did that for so long that I just got tired. And I wanted to just kind of enjoy my wife, my family, and do kind of what I wanted to do, which is not a whole lot, so that's kind of now that's a perspective that not everybody has, but I think part of it is because, as I intimated when we were talking, is that people don't prepare for retirement. They don't, and particularly financially and emotionally, so that they can really handle it. See, because it's not that easy today to live without a full income from someone that you're employed by, and just to be able to make it, you have to prepare for that. So a lot of people say, oh, I just enjoy the work. But if they would be honest, a lot of them are working because they have to.
Okay, so let's take those in pieces.
Okay.
So how does one emotionally get ready?
Okay.
How do you prepare yourself emotionally? And then we'll take financially second.
Okay. I will not say that I was 100% prepared.
Okay.
I was probably 80% prepared, but it was enough for me to make the decision. I think, Frank, that that the stages of life and the stages of ministry, even though I am a very energetic, at 81 years old, there was a time when I wouldn't even say my age, but I say it now because God is keeping me, but there's a certain point where in ministry, you're there because sometimes of the wrong reasons. You really know you should turn it over because you want the congregation to grow. And that's really what happened. I mean, we made several major moves. We used to be in Mid-City and 29th in Illinois. We outgrew that. We moved to 38th Street in Indianapolis, there for 20 years. We outgrew that. And then we built, as you know, if you looked out this chapel window, you could see almost where we built on the hill. I had done just about everything that I could do, except be a burden to them. The people will not get rid of you if you haven't done anything wrong, or what they think is wrong. So I could have been there another 10 years easily. I mean, I actually could still be there. But here's what would have happened. I feel, I would have been broken, beat, too tired, okay? Because I was one of those guys that, laid down in the sheepfold gate. I wasn't one of the kind that just preach on Sunday. I was 100%. So, but I said, and it's interesting you asked that because something happened that I just now, thinking about this interview, came to me. Because people ask me, well, Tom, I just can't, you're so vigorous. Why did you, I don't understand why you, well, part of it is the flip-flop thing. Want to just put my feet up and relax, go to the beach, travel, okay. But the other is, and this is really significant, I think, when we moved there to the hill, 40 acres of land, really, really kind of unheard of, one of the highest points in the city, beautiful setting. We built a nice building, but the building was a multi-purpose building, okay? Now, in retrospect, Frank, personally, given the way I'm put together, I could have made another decision, but I think the trends were, multi-purpose, use it, then build the sanctuary. But that's not me, though. And I could have built the sanctuary, but I decided to do that first because I knew how much the sanctuary is going to cost. All right, so now, watch this. So I think it was 2001, we moved in to that building. And everything looked fine. It was a beautiful building, beautiful. So, and we worshiped in what is called a gymnatorium. Worship and praise for us was our lifeblood. I mean, this was the drawing card, this was everything. But the building began to dictate. I know this sounds, but it just kind of wasn't, just couldn't get it back. couldn't get 38th Street, we just couldn't get that, you know. Yeah, it was just, it's something about it was a auditorium and not a sanctuary. It was a gym, a gymnatorium.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the revelation. Thank you for inviting me, because I had to think about this. Why did I leave when I was healthy and everything, you know? And I know that people who are my age, they didn't even last that long. And then some still. But why did you leave? I presented to them, in light of the world, you know I love you, but I presented to them a proposal about 4 years before I retired. I said, I tell you what I want you to do. I had an architect to redesign the building that we're in, to turn it into a worship space. You know, and I wouldn't have to tell you what a worship space is versus a gymnatorium, okay? Yeah, okay. You know, altar, you know, the whole stuff. Had it all. Had the rendering done, put it out in the lobby, talked about it. I said we could take this building and turn it into a worship place unlike anything that we've ever seen. We can outsource all of our youth activities and the other things that we were using the building for. We could rent another building and do that. Right. They never moved. Now, I mean, the people never caught it, and if they did catch it, they didn't hold on to the ball. Yeah. So now everything I had done from 1969 to 2006, everything, they stepped right behind me, and man, they sacrificed their time, talent, and treasure to do one big move after another. But once we got out there, I believe that they settled, and they didn't buy that vision. So I kind of said to myself, if you're leading and there's nobody following, well, it's time to go. So for the next 4 years, I planned my retirement. It was not public, but I planned my retirement. And that's how that all came about. But I did not realize until you invited me to this forum, I did not realize what was it though that, you know, what was it that made you just say, okay, that's enough? Right. I said, well, you know, because I didn't want to break down trying to lead the people. You know, I mean, that's a whole nother, you know what that feels like. I wanted to, maybe I was spoiled, you know, because it had always been, it's not an issue. I just cast a vision, they follow. That one, they didn't move. I said, you know what? It's time for some new, bright, younger leadership. They can build a separate sanctuary, you know, I mean, if they want to, or however they want to do it, you know, they can do that. But I've had a good run, and don't be greedy and don't be needy. Just love the people. And oh my God, if you only knew how much I love those people. But just say goodbye. Mm-hmm. And that's how that came about. Yeah.
Okay. So we're talking about emotionally preparing oneself so the lesson from that would be what? For younger, I have a sense, I'm asking for yours. I don't want to inject in. I want you to tell me, what's the lesson?
Well, the lesson is you got to know when to hold and when to fold. You got to be unselfish about your flock, your people. I said to your class, and I'll just say it again, most of our pastors are not prepared for retirement. And I don't just mean emotionally, I mean financially. Mm-hmm. So they hang around a little too long. And I'd rather be asked up than asked down. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is kind of where the problem is. And the churches are hurt, and often the pastor is hurt by them staying too long, because they want to put him out or put her out, and the person should have seen what was going on. Yeah. So that's a critical issue, the financial issue. So what I did, we have an unusually blessed situation in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, particularly when it comes to the pension fund, one of the best run in the country. And I don't know if I was wise or just, I don't know but I started in it when I started at Second Christian.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, so people want to know, look, when I started Second Christian, senior pastor, I was making $13,500 a year. Now that was a little time ago, but I'm just telling you, the people look at me and they say, "Well, man, yeah, but no, but say, man, you've got to pray, and you've got to push, and you've got to pull, and you've got to pray, and you got to do the work. You do the work, the reward is there." Early in my ministry, Frank, one of the people that we all admire, one of the greatest voices in Christendom, the mystic Howard Thurman, I actually developed a personal relationship with him. He ministered in our church. I did sabbaticals in San Francisco with him. He told me one thing that I just have to say, Dr. Thurman, I want to thank you for this, because not only did it change my life, I want to share it with the world. It's real simple, but you have to. He said to me, "Tom, when you and Jesus become one, all of life's resources will flow towards you." Now, it took me a minute or two to figure out what he was talking about. And what he was talking about was our relationship to Jesus, to God. Are you playing this thing, or, are you wanting the benefits without the blood? Yeah. So I figured out that as wild as I can be sometimes, if you really know me, I stay on my face and on my knees, because I'm not really, I'm in some ways I'm out of my element. I mean, actually, God has just blessed me. And I mentioned to the class that repentance precedes obedience. We're trying to get the resources that the Christian life gives you without repenting, without saying, "God, this is not me. I want to walk the way you walked." Now that doesn't mean you have to go, to a monastery and throw all your possessions away. It just means that stuff we do that's unrepented, that stuff, there's a lot of stuff. Yeah, a lot pastors, a lot of stuff we do is unrepented stuff, and it's in the way. You will never obey God the way you should until you repent, and it's daily, it's moment by moment by moment by moment, because stuff rises, you got to push it down, and you got to stay that way, and God will take care of you. That's my testimony. Yeah, we'll take care of you, because people, it's not me. It's really the relationship. I don't have a lot of stuff. I don't have a lot of stuff in between me and God. And your book, Dangerous Sermon, the Dangerous Sermon book. Yeah. See, it's our theology that actually informs our preaching. It's really, what is your relationship with God? I know you're a great preacher. You got all this. You know people just go crazy when you preach. But what's your relationship with God? And so that has everything to do with what you say. You know, I mean, what are you saying to these people? And does it really matter? And is it really expository, or is it you in between that word and no? And what makes it the Dangerous Sermon thing I read. But this is I did this. This is what I'm going to tell you before I read the book, though. I never will forget. I'm going to not name the pastor, but I went to up east to preach for an anniversary. Now, see, sometimes this is where I would fault myself, but I want to say this for what it's worth. I preached a dangerous sermon, but I did it on an anniversary. Because I didn't have the experience that says, hold that one, hold that one, do this one, because this is the occasion. Now, the sermon was brilliant. Yeah, it really was. But it was, and so the pastor, at the 9 o'clock service, I preached it. And we went in the study, and he said, look, he said, now, I don't want to get in the way of what you do, but man, could you come up with something else to say service? and the sermon, to show you where it was. I am most comfortable, and always have been, and I'm sure, as a pastor, you of course, in my own church. I mean, the people, you don't have to go through a whole lot of stuff. They know you, and you can preach almost anything. Right. So I had discovered that there was a spirit loose in the land. And it was not racial, but it sounded racial because it applies to every racial group. And the Lord gave me this title, the spirit of the nigger, not N-I-G-G-E-R, N-I-G-G-A, which is not racial. It's the spirit of depravity, of violence, of sin, and it was at a time when, the country, the rap thing had gotten, the gangster rap, and, they were doing, and so I had this masterpiece talking about a spirit, but I used it on an anniversary. And the reason that I did it was because I'm kind of a person that you got to get it out. You know, I mean, this has to be said. Didn't work. But then again, another experience was, I actually at Mississippi Boulevard Christian Church. But remember now, so I'm giving you all this because it helps you to understand me, because the background is, you know, I didn't have years of experience sitting in church or working with a pastor, or I had to learn, you know. Yeah. But at the dedication of the new building, or the building on Mississippi Boulevard, you know, I did the dedication. Alvin was the pastor, Alvin Jackson, and it wasn't that sermon, but it was another one that I used. But it was not that I was trying to use it. It was just that's what I thought, and that was called Why Black People Shout. And I did a racial thing because I was so proud of what was going on. I showed them and this is why we shout. Alvin said, he said, you know, that was a great sermon, but he said, I don't think I would have preached that one though. Okay. And so the only thing that kept me from, because I was so disappointed. I did not want to disappoint him. And I said, well, why do you say that? He said, well, I mean, you know, we were here. This was our dedication, but I was saying, you know, and I thought okay. But Maxie Dunham, Methodist preacher, president emeritus of Asbury, he came up to me after and said, you know what? I said, what? He said, that's the best sermon I ever heard. So that's the only thing saved me, you know, because I was so, I felt. So, you know, then you probably want to ask the question, well, how do you feel about flunk? The key, Frank, to, you know, every preacher that I know, if they would be honest, has had those times when they feel that they have flunked. Oh, sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel that way on either one of those occasions, but it was the circumstance and thing, yeah. But I have had them though. Yeah. And I was gonna say the reason I feel that a preacher, me included, does not get the response that they think, and this, you have to be careful with this, because some of your best work, you thought you flunked, but they didn't. Right. See, I mean, we're back now, we're switching it up now. See, yeah, you thought you messed up, right, but they didn't. They thought it was the best sermon they ever heard. Right. But what I think though, that creates the problem for the preacher and his feeling that is if he took the moment for granted and warmed up something that was not God for that day. Right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And just found themselves, see, as I said, my comfort level was always best with my own congregation because you had to cut through all that stuff. But on the road, I have had some situations like but partly my fault, but I'm never sure whether I flunked or not, but I feel like I did. Mm-hmm. I mean, no one said it to me, but I feel like I did. Mm-hmm. But you know, we preach thousands of sermons, so you know, you have to weigh it all together. Yeah, but what I was going to say is that the reason that I think that pastors have a problem when you do flunk, or you feel you flunked, it's primarily because you're not prepared for that moment. What I mean by that is you assume too much, you took too much ego into the situation, you were too careless with the fact that you didn't prepare yourself devotionally for that moment. And of course, so you felt, then you would, you felt empty, they didn't jump up and down, or they didn't do whatever, but it's because of you though. Right. I think. Yeah.
I want to go back, and it might be that we end up cutting this out the tape, so I realize this. So
Okay.
You can respond to this or not respond to it. I want to go back when you put out the sanctuary vision.
Okay.
And I want to talk about, not long, but it just strikes me to say, did it feel like being out there by yourself, put on a train? You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Abandonment.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah. Yes. You see, if anybody listens to Frank Thomas, this is Frank Thomas right here. Oh boy, you little tricky little something, you went all back behind the thing, and but that's the key to your preaching efficiency. That remember what I said at the beginning. I said every book I ever wrote was about saving children. See, Mama's Boy was just one. Boys to Men was another.
Yeah, I remember Boys to Men. It's hanging in the church now.
The Home Alone Syndrome was another. Yeah. See, so all of that. Yeah. So we our ministries, in one way or another, are affected by our pain, and I'm almost afraid to bring this up because it just gets me so emotional. I can't. But I called you or you called me, I can't remember which. I think I called you to express my condolences at the loss of your dad.
You did. Yes, you did.
And I just can't understand well, I can understand, but I just still, I became so emotional. Mm-hmm. I couldn't believe it, And I'm calling trying to help you, and I'm the one that fell completely apart on the phone. Right. But you just pushed the button a minute ago when you said, is that abandonment issue, has it ever basically been resolved? I'm not sure. I can only say that you are probably right, that I had up to that point I was in a bubble of people. Now, it was another generation too, by the way. See, I went through 3 generations. Right. Yeah. That's a fact. Who just grandmothered me, mothered me, fathered me. And when I had gotten into 40 years of ministry, that was a different crowd. Yep. And I may have felt very much abandoned. I mean, I'm your son. I'm your guy. I'm your pastor. I wouldn't lead you wrong. But that group said, no, we're not. We're okay. We're okay. I wasn't okay, but I guess they were okay. Yeah, but that's a very, very important point. But ladies and gentlemen, that's Frank Thomas at his best. He goes all up under the stuff and pulls all kind of stuff out of people that they don't want to. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's him.
Just asking questions.
Yeah, right. Uh-huh.
I'm going to publish this, I guess, but maybe by the time this comes out, I'll have to decide. My dad wrestled with abandonment issues.
I see. Don't.
My dad, he was born in Mississippi to teenage parents. And the story that I was told wasn't there, but I'm just telling you the story that I was told, was that the girl's parents, my grandmother's parents, would not allow her to raise him because he was too dark. and so shipped him to his father. And his father, and he struggled with that, with the relationship between the two of them. And it took his death for me to see him like this. You know, not in a bad way, but in a more human way.
Exactly.
You know, you can.
We have the same experience. The same experience. My father, I told you, I went back to, St. Louis to make everything right. It was okay. It was okay. We weren't really where we should have been, because partly it's me, partly him. Right. I was an only child. Right. But that was an issue for me. Did they just put me on that train at 5 years old because they didn't love me? And it probably, it's always been there. It's always been there. And I, have had, that's been a burden. It's been a burden. And I've tried to work it out through books. I've tried to work it out. I think the closure came, though, on his deathbed for me. And it was only 3 words. 4. Tommy, I love you. And that's all I need to hear. And, he'd never, now see, men are strange creatures anyway, he never said that in my entire life. Did he ever say that? But when I looked at him and I said, "Oh, Dad, I'm so sorry, you're so sick." He said, "Tommy, I love you." So that closed that chapter, but the melody lingers on. And I think that was a very astute observation, and I hadn't thought of it that way. That my response to that was, oh, here we go again. Because the strange thing about it is, up until that time,
I never.
Oh man, it was like I can't even explain the kind of relationship I had to that church. And that, it was not a breakup, breakdown, negative. It wasn't that. It was just that's the first time they said no. That was kind of like, wait a minute here. And remember, an only child now. See, I'm an only child. Yeah, that's, so when I came in, all the little grandmas, we just had a ball for 40 years. Yeah, and, yeah. But that's very good, though. That's very good. I don't know what I can do about that. I just think that's a good observation. But I just want the church to know that I don't hold anything against them for that, because I've even admitted publicly to them that was my mistake. That if I had probably framed it differently coming in. So for instance, if we had built what I said, there wouldn't have been a problem. I probably would have had people saying, well, we don't like this outsourcing stuff. That'd been another kind of problem, Yeah.
And so I think that, for the lessons, there are many, many multi-complex reasons that we retire.
Yeah.
Or that we leave a church.
Yeah.
And we don't always know. In some places, we haven't done the work to know our deepest motivations. Or maybe it's not time for us to know our deepest motivations. Or maybe life isn't unfolding. Or maybe, I think this is for our listening audience and for me and for everybody else. is, to get somewhere and get with somebody, God, therapist, family, and, Parker Palmer has a book, or he calls it a clearance committee. So he was going to take this job as president of a school, and so in the Quaker tradition, they have a clearance committee where you just bring everybody around, your closest friends, and they just ask questions. All they do is they don't give in, they ask questions. So anyway, they kept asking him about this presidency, and they said to him, "Do you notice that whenever we ask you, you say what you don't like about it? You ain't said one thing that you like about being a president. You just kept listening." And he said, and then they sat in silence, and he heard himself. And so he said he admitted to the group that he was going to be the president because he wanted to have his picture in the paper.
Wow.
Okay. And so he said he, of course, turned the job down because the motivations are so, it's God, it's us, it's our family, it's our issues, it's opportunity. And I think that your testimony provides us a window into how to make a good retirement decision. How do you do that? Financially prepare, and for me, emotionally prepare. And so, you can give me your feedback on that. So in other words, I think that this is a valuable contribution to this discussion that we're having about preaching. Because as you said earlier in the class, we neglect this part.
Yes, yes.
And we're focusing on success.
Yes, yes.
And there's this other train, this other.
Yeah, well, just, literally the train, I mean, we forget it. That's been part of my testimony. But the question is, have I resolved the pain? Yeah. Have I worked through the issue? But you see, but I also think that the bright side of it is that it is that very thing that keeps you from hurting other people.
Yeah.
Because you've been hurt.
That's right.
Now, some people don't do that. So, there are others that they say hurting people hurt people.
Right.
But in my case, it's made me very all of my programs, were kind of like the Respect Academy and teaching kids how to, shake somebody's hand, firmly look them in the eye. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. May I please? And it's brought a gentleness to my spirit that wouldn't normally or necessarily be there. Is that it's a broken spirit.
Right.
It's a broken spirit, and it's a repentant spirit. Right. Because I've made some I've made some mistakes, and people have loved me through those mistakes. Yeah. And I've made mistakes that I didn't even know about. You know what I mean? Yeah. But yeah, I think that now I mentioned to the class that this business of sermon preparation is not just the organization of your notes, and your study of the text that you're going to preach. No, it's setting that aside and saying, God, I'm not worthy. You're worthy. And God, I need you like I've never needed you before. I'm bringing a broken vessel here. I'm there's some things I still got to talk to you about. But what we do, because it's a profession, we're so good at it. We just jump right on, in the pastor's study, hey, ha, 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 ho, ho, yeah, ha, slapping hands on you, and we're out there on the thing. That's really not preaching at its best. You might have thought that everybody, applauded or whatever they do, but that's not it. I think, I don't think I know, that if the preacher would take as much time, or let me put it this way, would focus a period of time both before his preaching or her preaching and in the study after preparing the sermon, to bleed over it, to cry over it. You couldn't go wrong. No, you couldn't go wrong. Yeah, Now, let me just tell you, the greatest compliment, but see, I've never really seen myself, because I don't know, I know something about preaching and I know something about pastoring. I probably know a lot, but I don't really feel that I do feel that I was a very dedicated pastor. I feel like I laid it all on the field for. I don't have any regret. I don't have any regrets about well, you dodged and I didn't do none of that. I mean, and people, whatever they paid me, I earned it. I never felt like I was doing anything but giving them the very best. You'd be interested to know that I had one of the best sermons that I ever preached. Now, I felt it and the people felt it. But it came out of a very interesting, tender incident. I was in Dallas, Texas at the Hyatt Hotel preaching for Zan Holmes, St. Luke United Methodist Church. I went downstairs and to me, this is the best kind of preaching though. I went downstairs and to the shoe shine stand. Now, black people don't have those jobs anymore. Somebody got them jobs. I've seen, this was a Korean lady, So the first time I went down at the very beginning of the week, she shined my shoes, and I just kind of would, say, I'm generous with what I gave her, and I told her that, the Lord is, blessing you right now. I hope you're enjoying it. Oh yeah. I enjoy. I like what I do. So next time I came down, sat there, she said, "You preacher?" She said, I said, "Yes." She said, "Oh, preacher. Oh, preacher. You preacher? Oh, preacher." And man, God gave me a sermon. Actually, I got to find this. I mean, this is a long time ago. Preacher, oh, preacher. How can they hear without a preacher? How can he preach lest he be sent? And the thing about that sermon was I said, we've lost our endearment for the office, both the preacher and you, the congregation. This woman of a different culture just adored. You preach? She said, "You preacher?" I said, "Man, you didn't never. I don't know if you ever hear that. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's kind of like, oh, you the preacher, huh? yeah, that kind of thing. But the greatest compliment for me that I ever received was in the 43 years was 2 years ago. I'm back over here for some reason at the seminary, and I'm walking down the hall. Did I tell you this? I'm walking down the hall, and Dr. Ron Allen, who was my preaching professor, and Henry Grady Davis was the book designed for preaching. And it's a great, it's a standard.
It's a classic.
It's solid.
It's not, yes.
Yeah. So wait a minute. So he's coming down the hall. I haven't seen him. I actually haven't seen him since I had him in, so that would be 30 years. You know what he said to me? Tom Benjamin, the promise of participatory preaching. That was my dissertation. Wait, listen to me now. Did you hear what I just said? 30 years later,
Right.
I'm walking down the hallway. My preaching professor says, Tom Benjamin. And the tag, well, to be honest with you, I had forgotten the name of the dissertation. But he remembered. I said, now, you know what? I can't be all bad.
Right. That's right.
Yeah, so that was, now that right there helped me, you know, because I was retired too, see then, and have I done anything worth, anybody, yeah. Because I indicated to you and to the class, and I really know that this would be important to our audience, that people ask me about this disconnection, particularly with long-term pastorates, with, a congregation. What do you really, yeah, it's hard. It's hard even when you decide that you want to do it, because it's like a marriage. The only difference, though, is you must understand that generally the relationship between a pastor and the people, it seems personal. It may be to you because you're one and they're many, but it's really not that personal with them. It's more professional. So when you come to the end of the journey of your pastorate, do not be discouraged because people don't seem to be that interested in you anymore. It's just a professional thing. You serve them. They were happy you were there. They identified with your ministry and used your name and the church. But it wasn't necessarily personal, though. Now there's some that you still continue a relationship, but when that bell rings, make sure you have your shoes on and your pocketbook and you just go on and say thank you, because it's a whole nother ball game. And I guess what I know you want me to say is this: have your house in order. My dear friends, I don't know who's listening. I don't know what pastor is listening. I don't know where you are in your ministry, but I'm going to tell you, and Frank is my amen corner. Retirement's coming. Most guys stay too long because they haven't prepared. Most women and men stay too long because they haven't prepared themselves financially, not to mention emotionally, for retirement. So they stay, and then they get into tension with the congregation, who is kind of sitting there wanting to ask them down, but courtesy doesn't allow them necessarily to do it, although there is a committee that's working on it, There is a committee working on it. You may not know who the committee is, but so it's better to be asked up than asked down. But the problem that we have is that you have not taken care of your financial house because you've been so busy trying to serve the Lord's house that you've forgotten that you just can't live. You can't live by bread alone. You have to take consideration of the future after retirement, because nobody's going to take care of you. So you got to learn how to invest in the pension plan if you have one. If not, your 401, all that stuff, all those, you got to set some money aside. So one thing I've learned to do is all of your little engagements that you have away from your church, and that they've been so generous to allow you to do so, instead of spending that money, just use that as the kind of measuring rod. Just take that, say, now what I'm going to do from now on is I'm going to take the money that I get on the road and I'm going to invest it. You're getting a salary. I know it's not enough. I got that. I understand that. But I'm just trying to tell you how you make it. Right. You take that money and you invest it. You will be one happy character. I'm 81. I keep saying it because I can't believe it. That's why. But I'm 81. 99 and a half won't do. I live in Palm Springs, California. I made a decision. I didn't want to die with my boots on. I want to leave here in flip-flops. It cannot be done, Frank, if you don't prepare for it. Remember what I said? It's not like I done made all this money and you just, I've been blessed, but you remember I started like everybody else. Full-time pastor, making $13,000 a year. But 43 years later, investing in the pension fund and taking what I call grace money and investing that in the future for my retirement. I don't know if I've helped anybody, but I don't know. All I'm just saying, I'm just telling you what I'm telling you now.
Let me thank you for your time, for your story, for your vulnerability, for your openness. It helps some people. It's going to help some people.
I hope so.
It's going to help some people. So thank you.
Yeah, can I say this, though, to you before we leave? We owe a debt of gratitude to this gentleman, Frank Thomas. He is a gift to all of us, and particularly to the black church, but to all of us. His investment in education and his unusual ability in the pulpit, based, interestingly enough, that I figured this out too, based on his, now this is something I wish I had. I don't have it. I ain't gonna try to have it either. But is his. You want to know what the secret to Frank? Now this is one of the. No, wait a minute. This is one of the things that you might want to consider. I just mentioned about how you retire, okay? But you might want to consider in your preaching more transparency. I'm really not very good at that because I got hurt in a way that that wasn't my strength. My strength was more in the ability to in worship and praise and I'm clean and clear that way. So people know, but this man he's able to his transparency. He's able to say stuff that people just don't normally say in the pulpit. He puts his hurts on the table. See, I haven't been ever able to do that. Not really. I am doing it better now because you heard me talking about stuff that I don't normally even talk about. But this man is great at that. And he's helped a lot of people. But they want to know, what is it about Frank Thomas? Why? I mean, he doesn't even raise his voice. Well, it's really not about raising your voice. It's about letting people see God. You remember what happened to him on Calvary? Broken, beaten, and by his stripes, we're healed. Now that's a secret right there, whether you know it or not. It's not easy to do. Now, I'm gonna close with this. You know, preachers, you know, they don't mean anything about time, they just talk. But I want Frank to know, and I want you to know, after having said all I've said, I'm really a nobody. But I'm a nobody that somebody cared about. And when I get to heaven, I'm not sure I've resolved all of my issues, and I'm not sure that, you know, all of my sins have been, I've repented of every sin I know of. But when I get to heaven, I don't think they have to, I'm not sure you have to have any passcode or anything once you get to the gate or whatever. But when if they ask me, what makes you think you can come in here? I'm gonna tell them. I didn't know everything about justification of faith or by faith. You know, I was not the #1 theologian, none of that. But, and I wasn't the best pastor, I wasn't the best preacher, and I don't know who decides that, but that man in the middle, the one that was between the two, he said, I could come in.
Stop it.
Is that enough?
That's all that needs to be said, right?
Love you, Frank, man. Keep up the good work.
Thanks,
yeah,
man.
man.
Thanks.
Love you. Okay, baby. Yeah.